My Incoterm explanation is regarding the Incoterm CFR. So CFR stands for cost and freight. So what is CFR? CFR is mainly where the seller arranges carriage. It is also a system for cost transfer at the destination port from seller to the buyer. Another fact of CFR is the risk transfer from seller to buyer when the goods have been past the ship's rail. There are two types of obligations when it comes to CFR. The first one being the seller pay and the second one being the buyer pay. Seller pay includes of goods, commercial invoice, documentation, and export packaging and marking. On the other end, buyer pay obligations include of unloading charges in port of import as well as carriage to place of destination.
The seller must pay the cost and freight to bring the good to the named place of destination on buyer's side. The buyer agrees to pay for everything else such as additional place of destination costs that are under the contract. For buyer need to pay insurance, obtain import license and pay duties and taxes. For seller need to pay the contract of carriage, obtain export license, pay for duties and taxes and provide invoices.
Furthermore, they know that both are having lower risk because it has insurance that already covered the goods. But the seller needs to pay the high cost because they have to pay duties and taxes and many more documents are involved. And finally, the goods are finally arrived safely to the customer.
Carriage and insurance paid is when a seller pays freight and insurance to deliver goods to a seller appointed party at an agreed upon location. Under CIP, the seller is obligated to insure goods in transit for 110% of the contract value. Carriage and insurance paid CIP is typically used in conjunction with a destination. CIP refer to transportation charges for any accepted mode of transport such as road, rail, sea, inland waterway, air or multimodal transport that involve a combination thereof.
Oh, hello guys. Do you know what is CIF? CIF is Cost, Insurance and Freight. It's an international shipping agreement which represents the charges paid by a seller to cover the cost, insurance and freight of a buyer's order while the cargo is in transit. CIF is quite similar to carriage and insurance paid to or CIP, but CIF is only used for sea and waterway shipments, while CIP can be used for any mode of transport, such as by truck. CIF involves two parties, which is the seller and the buyer. Both parties have their own liabilities when the goods are being transported. Until the goods are delivered to the buyer's destination port, the seller bears the cost of any loss or damage to the product. CIF only applies to goods transported via a waterway, sea or ocean. Until the goods have reached to the buyer's port of destination, the seller is fully responsible for the goods. However, once the goods have reached the buyer's port of destination, the buyer assumes responsibility for any fees or charges for unloading and delivering the shipment to the final destination.